Hey folks, this is Joey Fagel with the Muley Fanatic Foundation. I'm with my team, Janet Crofts and Chris Steffen. Today, another episode of Wild Things and Wild Places on the MFF Podcast. The Muley Fanatic Foundation focuses on many things. We allocate a lot of funds to multiple projects associated with the mission, and that can include habitat projects, research, or just some projects that are associated with the youth. But one other thing that we also tackle from the organization is on the political side. And there has been a really huge hot topic lately, and especially here in Wyoming, and that topic is the sale of public lands. And today we have a great guest with us, Jess Johnson with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. She is the Government Affairs Director of WWF and soon to be sending off to DC to represent Wyoming, that we are very excited about. And we couldn't ask for a better person to head towards the East Coast and represent and fight this battle that we have right now. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And yes, I think still working through some imposter syndrome going to DC, but excited to go for next week and sit in front of the Senate E&R committee and talk a little bit about why we value what we value here in Wyoming.
Yeah, and this topic we're talking about can be catastrophic for a lot of us folks that are outdoorsmen, recreationists, hunters, you name it, campers. This sale of our public lands, it's just not a good thing.
No, and to give a little context to those that maybe haven't dove fully into this topic, the at the federal level, the Senate is working on their budget reconciliation recommendations, and so there's a proposal floating around the Senate Energy and Natural Resource Committee that has a stipulation that mandates anywhere from 2 to 3 million acres of public land, so BLM or Forest Service, be sold. And I think like some of the scariness about this proposal is really how loosely it's written. I think they make a big point that this is not about national parks, this is not about wilderness, this is not national monuments. They're talking, I think the language that in fact Senator Mike Lee used is your quote unquote unused garden variety federal parcels, which many of us that are in Wyoming and are close to communities, sometimes it's those little sagebrush parcels that you get your first antelope on or you get your first mule deer on. And I certainly, my first mule deer came from one of those garden variety parcels. The bill language, while it doesn't talk about parks or monuments or wilderness, it also doesn't narrow it down to just close to communities. It opens a pretty big door for public lands that could be on the chopping block. And it's a pretty huge concern because there's not a lot of constraints around it either. They're mandated to sell it. It's from 11 different states. Oddly enough, Montana is exempt from it, which feels like a political move to Montana's delegation that fought a public land sale measure on the House side. And so it's just, we're still wrapping our heads around exactly what this bill is saying because it is incredibly vague. It has almost no sideboards to it. And while we're hearing our politicians saying that, oh, it's going to be close to communities and it's going to be close and chosen for housing and all of these things, that's just not what the bill says.
Some of these lands that are available for sale, they talk about close to the communities and for housing development and how it'll benefit those communities. Some of this land that can open up has rugged country, high elevations, especially here in Wyoming. There's no way that that's the purpose of this. And not only will affect what we love to do and go out and visit and camp, but it also affects some of our wildlife, especially some of these winter ranges for mule deer herds. There's big chunks of that land that sits right square on top of what these mule deer and elk and antelope depend upon to survive through the winter. So there's just a lot of things that this can affect.
You bring up a really good point too, with even if some of these lands are close to communities, actually one of the greatest threats that we're having to some mule deer habitat right now is like subdivision expansion and like this breaking up of continuous habitat for winter range mule deer, which especially in your guys' neck of the woods is absolutely imperative to healthy herds.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jess. It's just it's written so vaguely that, and then we're not supposed to be concerned as sportsmen and folks that live out west, or certainly this is not just a, if you live out west, you should be concerned and everybody else. We all know how much folks from back east and all over the country recreate in places like Wyoming and all these states that are affected. And to me, it's just like they keep touting the, we're not looking at selling national parks or wilderness, but it's that high country versus front country. We all know how important the country that, like you guys have already said, that wildlife relies on to make it through the winter, to migrate through and to, and it's just disingenuous to me. It's just, and then this language of, I know they want to, and I don't want to get your opinion on this. Some of this is they want to, or the language states to resolve some of the checkerboard issues. That's hugely an issue for us down here because we've got a ton of checkerboard issues. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's just like a checkerboard. One little section of 640 acres is privately owned. A lot of it down here is land grazing. Rock Springs grazing is a big one. And so the next little piece next to it is public property. And that extends both directions, north and south, from the interstate or the railroad, however you want to look at it. And in 20 miles on each side?
That checkerboard, and it makes management hard. And kudos to Rock Springs Grazing because they allow access for hunting and stuff like that. That's major, but it does make management hard. And especially in checkerboard patterns where you have private landowners that are maybe a little less open to access or being able to hunt on those lands, it can block up a lot of lands as well. And I think to give credit where credit's due, I think it's a really important thing that we do look at the checkerboard, that we are considering lands that make sense for transfer or figuring out how we fix a checkerboard pattern. The thing that I go back to time and time again is, this bill, because it is so broadly written, it only says to give preference to things like housing, fixing a checkerboard, adjacent communities, adjacent infrastructure. But giving preference doesn't mean that's the only thing. Like, as legally, when you look at that language in a bill, all that says is that you're required to consider it, not that you are constrained to that. The door is open for whatever you want to do. The word preference doesn't pigeonhole you in at all. Again, we go back to the concern of, great, if that's what you want to fix, then let's actually talk about it. But I think no matter the content of the bill, it doesn't matter if it's 250 million acres that are opened, 120, 3 million acres mandated sold, whatever it is, the content of the bill, as bad as it is, isn't the overarching problem. The problem is that land sales have no business being in the budget reconciliation process, because what it does is it cuts the public voice out. Now, listen, we're all frustrated with, I think, some of the federal land bureaucracy that comes around. It can take forever to do some management decisions. I don't even have to talk about the 12 years for the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan that it's taken. There are ways that it can be better. I understand the frustration. I very much understand it. But there are ways to get things done like this that are in standalone congressional bills, that have more stakeholder input, that take time, that are not on a timeline that is just ridiculously fast and does not bode well for a thought out and fleshed out idea. They're hoping to vote on this bill. It's been up for 2 weeks. It's been worked on for 2 weeks. That's it. Thinking that some RMPs take 12 years to get done. 2 weeks, we're trying to shove 3 million acres through. It offers a timeline of, they have to have these sold within 5 years, and within 60 days of the passage of the bill, they have to start coming up with lists of lands to sell. So even the timeline doesn't talk about actually talking to communities on what are their needs. Even if they're trying to fix the housing thing, this timeline makes no sense around this sort of decision making. So it goes back to, does this kind of thing belong in budget reconciliation process? And I'm sure that they've done smaller things on this before, but a land sale of this size that covers 11 states with this level of vague, poorly written legislation around it just does not belong in something that you're trying to get through in under a month.
Yeah, and unless you've been hiding under a rock, and I think we need to all recognize, because I've been living on social media since all this started, good and bad, looking at all the different comments and there's a huge groundswell. But then I always have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because that's the world I live in. It's like I look at everybody talking about draw results coming out yesterday and what they drew, what they didn't draw. And then I think, well, that's still a small handful of people, but they are people that
Yeah.
that's the world I live in. But this definitely has grown beyond that. I saw yesterday basically the ORV Association that's based in Indiana. They came out in opposition of it, which makes sense. You can't sell a bunch of campers if people don't have places to go camp. So it's definitely grown and everything else, but maybe just backing up a little bit for anybody who's not like totally aware of what's been going on. This started in the House of Representatives in their side of the budget reconciliation bill, and it was at a much smaller scale where we're talking about 2 states, Nevada and Utah, for the proposed sale of, what was it total?
It was in flux. It was under $1 million at that point.
And it quickly got swatted down pretty quick. Not near as much opposition as what we've seen now since it moved to the Senate. But obviously, like we said, it got to the Senate. Mike Lee in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee brought up this huge bill. Mike Lee's been at this for a while. This is a dream of his. I don't think it's any kind of hidden agenda, which that's what makes me scared as an outdoorsman. This isn't a hidden agenda. They've stated, we want to get rid of public land.
Yeah, Mike Lee is on record talking a lot about the amicus brief that Utah filed around getting rid of federal lands within Utah. So he is, like you said, he's been really upfront about it. This is nothing surprising out of him. This is very much what we expect to see from him. And I think as we're looking at elections coming, maybe one of the things that I would say is take your senator, take your representatives seriously when they tell you how they're going to vote on things, because they will do that and they will bring it forward. And ask them, hold them accountable, ask them about what their thoughts are on public land before you vote. So you know what's going to come forward, because no one's lying to anybody here. They're just following through with what they said they were going to do. And I think Mike Lee sees an opportunity. I think the senator sees an opportunity here, and to put this in the phrasing of housing and to talk about it's only closed to communities, all of this stories, he sees an ability to get the nose under the tent, so to speak.
Exactly.
And it's not a bad tactic if that's the end goal. That being said, it's a really scary thing. This has a high likelihood of making it through the Senate, and it's very scary. About the only thing backstop that we have is if this goes back to the House, making sure that Representative Zinke has folks like Simpson and others to back him up on getting this out.
Yeah, and when you talk about federal processes taking a while and this being so quickly fast-tracked, we do have the Federal Land Planning Management Act, been around since 1976, to address the exact same thing that they're claiming this land sale is all about, is to address the needs of communities that are maybe bumped up against federal land and they need to expand. Yeah, that does take a while because it does involve the communities. It has a process to it that involves local communities, local governments to weigh in on this. But what they're proposing has none of that.
No, and frankly, like what I was confused by is if this was what they were trying to sell or trying to work on is what you're talking about, like the community expansion, affordable housing, stuff like that, why they didn't just in the bill put the language, lands already designated as suitable for disposal under FLPMA. We have those lands. We've done the work. They're out there. So why open it to so much more? I don't even understand the inclusion of Forest Service. Why is Forest Service in there?
Exactly.
It does not make sense to be about housing and have Forest Service in there. And unless you live in Teton County. And frankly, I just heard that the Teton County commissioners sent a letter to DC asking to be exempt from this.
Yeah, and I watched, I don't know if you caught, so Randy Newberg has been in DC for a week. He came back, I think yesterday or whatever, but this video came out last night that I saw that kind of he gave an update on what's been going on, that what he's seen in DC. And it gave me a little bit of encouragement because of what he said, but certainly it's not a time for anybody to let up on their elected officials. but talking about all the things that are happening there and how things work. But one thing that really bothered me, because he was talking about the Montana exclusion, and he was pretty heated when he said, back off the Montana guys, because they literally put their foot down and said, we're not going to be a part of this. It wasn't a backdoor deal. It wasn't, we're going to exclude Montana and we'll vote for the rest thing. It was literally, we're not up for the sale of Montana public lands. And hopefully they're going to be a firm no when it comes to any time when the rest gets voted on. But what discouraged me is what he gave as far as the update for Wyoming. Our delegates, I have had some dialogue. I know a lot of us have with those folks, and it's not the greatest responses. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think because there's been some flux in information about what they keep talking about is what they're hearing from the senators. Oh, it's for housing, it's 1 to 5 miles, it's community development. Why wouldn't we want to do this? Which is all fine and good. And I think things that all of us, frankly, can agree on, except the bill doesn't say that. What I keep wanting to say is turn around and say, okay, show me in the bill where it constrains it to that, because it doesn't right now. And to be fair, it is still a draft. I hear that there might be another draft coming out on Monday that may have some changes in it. But folks are working with what we have for language, and the language isn't what we're hearing. The language says one thing, and our delegates are saying another. And frankly, like, as a lobbyist and someone who works in legislation, my motto has always been attack the policy, not the person. So go after the policy, go after what's in writing, and what's in writing is not good. Response has been disheartening at best. And some of the things that I would say is our delegates are extremely important in this. I think keeping up pressure, professional, respectful pressure is very important. I think sticking to what we know and what is factual is extremely important. And I think that you're always safe in saying, listen, it doesn't matter what maps are out there. It doesn't matter what lands are in this. The budget reconciliation is not a place for this process. Let's have this discussion outside of that. There's other avenues to do this work. This is not one that frankly, the state of Wyoming is comfortable with. And I feel really safe in saying the state of Wyoming, because despite feeling like I might be talking about being part of the choir, have you folks that may not know about this, I've yet to talk to someone, Republican, Democrat, whatever walk of life, I have yet to talk to someone that when you talk about the nuances of this aren't like, yeah, this is a bad idea. I've talked to state legislators they're like, yeah, every time we bring this up, this is a bipartisan issue in Wyoming. This is not a liberal push. This is a bipartisan and frankly, pretty heavy Republican push right now from the state of Wyoming to say, no, don't do this. And whether you can talk to state legislators that have been in this fight, you hear it like that. You can talk to anybody that's worked in this. They know that this is not a partisan issue. This is a Wyoming issue, and Wyoming speaking up and saying, don't.
That's probably the most discouraging thing, is it just seems like they're not listening to us. Like I said, it just seems so discouraging that we just don't seem to be getting anywhere with them. They just keep sticking to the same thing, and it's such a generic response.
Where we can be even more active is I've got to look at the timing on this, because Congresswoman Hageman is currently in the state right now going around doing town halls. And I think that's great. It's awesome that she's willing to stand here and talk with us. But it's a great place for folks in Wyoming to turn out to those town halls and ask her some of these questions and just keep having her on record. And I guess the thing that I would say is, if a representative of yours or a senator of yours is not representing you, remember that when you go back to the polls. And for the love of all that is holy, please go to the polls. 27% of Wyoming voted in the last election. At no point does that mean any of our representatives are representing the majority of the state. So it's the majority voice is not being heard, but it's because the majority didn't vote in this state. So we need people to get to the polls and vote. And we need people to ask their representatives to represent the things that they're interested in. And I think public lands is a very fair question to ask a prospective elective on how they stand on it.
Once again, just like you said, this is just another demonstration of why it's so important to go and vote. And then we always say you can't complain unless you vote. And this is an example right here. People need to really see this right now, because sure, the election is going to be there in another year or so, but that could be too late.
Yeah, and for those, if you're calling and you've already made the call to the senators, the other thing here is politics trickles up. This is not just a national delegate issue. This is something that we saw at our state legislature, and our state legislature pushed for a resolution this year specifically that was in favor of transferring all federal lands to the state or federal land sale as well. And that resolution was defeated by one vote in the Senate. That is not a landslide win. That was by the skin of our teeth. And so what that says to me, and what that also tells the national delegates, is that there is an appetite in the state to do that. That is if I was in DC and looking at a state legislature that votes that, I go, oh, that's interesting. The state is split, but it's not. And I think all of us know that those of us on the ground, yet to talk to somebody that thinks that this is a good idea. So calling your national delegates, very important, but call your state level ones, call your state representatives, call your state senators, call your county commissioners. Your county commissioners have a huge voice in this. They are a big part of your voice represented within the Federal Land Management and Policy Acts. The way that we work on resource management plans, county commissioners are your voice on those in a lot of those times. So they're pretty savvy with this process, and they need to hear this is where we want it, not at the federal level through budget reconciliation. Yeah, I would say is keep that push up, keep the pressure on DC. That is an absolute must. Secondly, put the pressure on your local folks. Talk to your senators and representatives that are your state local ones. Start letting them know how you feel about this. And then thirdly, talk to your friends out of state. This is going to take, whether it's in the Senate or whether it comes back to the House for a conference vote, we're going to need people that are in Republican states talking to their Republican representatives to stand with Representative Zinke on this. And kudos to Montana's delegation for standing hard on this. That is a mega thing. But they're going to need some friends. And so we can talk to our senators. I wouldn't suggest calling senators from other states, but I would say if you have family or friends in other states, encourage them to do that. And definitely pick up the phone, go have coffee with your local state rep. Talk to them about this. Politics trickles up. It comes from the bottom.
I think this is a little discouraging for me, and I'm sure I've missed some things, but from a state level, have you seen much pushback on this from the state level? I've heard of or seen a couple of our state representatives come out in opposition to this, and I think we've had some communication with the governor's office, but not a lot of comments.
I agree. Not a lot of comments. I have heard from some. I met with my representative yesterday, and one of the things is Representative Lloyd Larson, and I just really admire him because no matter what his personal beliefs are, he has heard loud and clear from his community that federal land transfer or federal land sale is not up for discussion. And every time that man stands and votes on that, he votes for his constituents. It doesn't matter what his personal feelings are. And sometimes I think his personal feelings are in conflict with what his constituents do. But to give a big call out there, that is somebody who is voting and representing his people. And that is awesome. I've heard from other senators and other representatives in the state as well that are standing against this. They're asking, what can I do? How else do I get involved here? Senator Eric Barlow has been one of those that has really just been a voice of education and reason and the ability to look at this as, here's the problems I see with this. This doesn't seem like a good idea, put where it is. So yeah, there is that voice there. I wish there was more, which is why I'm saying those voices are only going to be there if they're starting to feel pressure from their constituents. And that is our democratic duty. And again, I want to emphasize as we're doing this, you lose your power when you are disrespectful or when you are angry. You lose your power. You retain your power, and you, in fact, gain power when you are professional, respectful, and still passionate. So whenever you're having these discussions with your representatives, as much as you might want to fly off the hinge and reach out and react in fear and in anger, you got to come at it from a way of you're talking to another human and they're going to react like a human.
Yeah, don't have a couple beers and then contact your representative. Might not be a good idea. I don't know. And I think I know guys other hunters. And again, this is not just a hunting issue. This is, if you enjoy the outdoors and recreate on public land, this should concern you. But I know guys who are just nervous about it. Like, what would I get on the phone and say? Or what would I say in an email? Just tell them point blank, you don't support this and you expect them not to support it. And that's all you need to say. You don't need to, maybe you don't know all the intricate details of what this bill is and everything else. But the bottom line is these elected representatives work for us, not the other way around. And I admire elected officials who can, that represent their constituents. That's what they're there to do. Whether they feel that same way or not, if they're overwhelmingly bombarded with a singular message of, hey, this is not what we want, then that damn should be how they vote, or that's how they should feel. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about just don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to make that call or send that email.
And this is a topic that gets a lot of attention. And I think it's smart of us to take stock of who is weighing in and who is not.
Yeah, and I didn't till it was like day before yesterday, and I heard the name Jason Chavez come up. And I had forgotten about Jason. He was the congressman from Utah that back in 2016, 2017, and I don't know if it was in a budget reconciliation process or just the general budget process, or he floated some idea to sell 3 million acres of public land. I don't think it was just in Utah. It might have been, I don't know, but he represented Utah. And it was smacked down pretty quick. And in pretty short order, he was no longer representing the United States in Washington. I think it was 6 months, and he resigned his position. I guess that's a heads up.
It's a very powerful thing. And that's maybe the beauty of public lands. And whenever we talk about what's the value, and I think what we're sussing out is some of the value is public lands is not partisan. Public lands is American. And like it's being demonstrated loud and clear how valuable that is to bring us together, because this is not a bipartisan issue. This is an American issue. And boy, are we all standing in lockstep together on this. That has to give some of us some hope here. And I think a politician that sees that and recognizes the power, and that's someone who's going to stay in office.
Yeah, and I'm definitely seeing more and more businesses in the outdoor industry coming out now in opposition to this. I know Weatherby did just a little bit ago, starting to get
Okay.
more gun manufacturers and yeah, all sorts of walks of life. But it should be every business that has anything to do with the outdoors should be coming out in opposition to this.
Yeah, this is not the way that we dispose of federal land. We don't do it through budget reconciliation. We do it through thoughtful stakeholder built community input, whether it's through FLTMA or through a standalone congressional bill. But budget reconciliation is not the place for this. And I think that's being said loud and clear. I just hope they listen.
So how did this gig for going to DC come up? Tell us about that.
I got a phone call on Tuesday, and through some of my work with Artemis and getting women out into the hunting and angling world, I came across one of the gals that works in Senator Heinrich's office. Senator Heinrich's the New Mexico senator. He's also the minority ranking member on Senate loves public lands, and he's a big hunter. He's a fantastic senator down there. And I got a call from one of his staffers that I got to know. She said that he was putting together a roundtable to talk about public lands, and that they were looking for a voice of a hunter from a red state, that my name sifted to the top, and if I would be willing and could figure out how to get to DC within a week, that they would love to have me sitting on the round table. So of course, these are the kind of things where like, when you're like, oh my gosh, this seems like a really huge, scary thing. And I'm the person that always says, I have a friend that says nervous means do it. So if you're a little scared, that's probably a good thing, but also maybe you should do it and lean in. And so I said, absolutely, I would love to. And I've spent the last couple of days talking to representatives, talking to hunters, talking to everybody that I can think of on what do you want represented? What do you want them to hear in DC about what we think about public lands here in Wyoming from the hunting voice? And I'm going to do my best to sit there and convey that.
Well, so is this going to be in front of the whole Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee?
Yes, I think that's the point of it. I know it will always depend. Sometimes committee members can and can't make it. I do know that this is a roundtable supposed to be for the whole committee. I've been told it'll be held similarly to a formal committee hearing, but maybe a little less formalized. So it's a roundtable. It's a place for us, those of us that are on it, to, I think we have about 5 minutes to give a presentation, and then there's a lot of questions and answers. So we're there to share where we're coming from, share our thoughts on this proposal, share our what we're hearing as impacts on these from this proposal, as well as an ability for the committee to ask questions.
Do you know who else is on it with you?
There's a gentleman out of Powell who does a lot of like trail maintenance and stewardship. And then I think Land Tawny was asked, but I don't have the full list. I think there's 4 to 6 of us. It's not a big group. At least I think that's what I've been told. I'm still getting a lot of details.
This is an excellent opportunity.
It's a big opportunity, yeah. And it's an ability to bring rural Wyoming and our values into a place that doesn't get to hear it very often, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, you're going to do great. You're knowledgeable, you're passionate, and I think you do a great job.
It means a lot to hear that. And we really appreciate the work and the support from Muley Fanatics. You guys have always been amazing, and you're really been the tip of the spear on a lot of things. So when you guys weigh in, you carry weight.
Well, I'm afraid our spear is a little duller now, but we're trying. Getting back to the Wyoming thing, like you mentioned, the resolution last year that fell 1 vote short, had it passed, it wasn't a resolution isn't binding. It just goes out there and says, as Wyoming, so to speak, we want all the public lands transferred to us. Correct?
Yeah, it is a non-binding piece of legislation. It's basically meant to be sent to DC and say that Wyoming feels this.
And so, what are your sense do you think something like that's going to come back up again in the next legislative session?
Boy, I dare them. I don't know. I think because it's a budget session and you need a 2/3 vote
Right.
to end a piece of legislation in a budget session in Wyoming, I would hope that they don't take up time with this kind of fight during something like that, especially when we didn't pass a supplemental budget last year and have a lot of issues to sort out this year. I would hope that they stay pretty focused on their congressional duties to fund the state and get the budget out. If they do bring it up, I am very curious, considering the groundswell of what we have seen and the momentum that this has built. I'd be surprised if anybody brought it up, but I've been surprised a lot in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I run across people who say, yeah, the federal government shouldn't own our lands. It should be under control of the state of Wyoming. But when the next question is, do you support that being sold? The answer is a resounding hell no, it shouldn't be sold. We should just manage it. And you can have arguments back and forth as to why that's not a good idea for the state to own the land and we just can't afford it. And there's studies and things that we've paid for in the state that show that pretty clearly. But we'll see, I guess, what they decide or don't decide to bring up.
And that's the thing, is this is not a new discussion. This is not a new problem. It is a new way that they are going about it at the national level. From the time of the quote unquote sagebrush rebellion, it rears its head every 5 to 10 years. And we had a constitutional amendment in 2016 that when I first came on and started working with WWF, that was being thought out and that was resoundingly shut down. And that was 2016. And here we're coming on that 10-year mark again, and it's back. So it's just that it is an idea that comes up and gets resoundingly defeated every single time. But it's getting more nuanced. And the way that we've seen it in DC now, and this is the thing, if people like, why is now, oh, it's just going to die again. It's bad. But this is the scariest attempt I've seen or in history that I have read about. This because it has a chance of passing. The other ones, they were bad ideas, but they were like bad ideas that didn't have a ton of support. This is a bad idea and it's got some momentum and it's scary. The silver lining is the pressure is working. And I think what Randy Newberg said is they're feeling it. Don't stop don't just be putting pressure on DC, put pressure on your state and your state officials. And remember this when you go to the polls.
Glad you brought up like your local officials and stuff like that, Jesse, because folks are scared to reach out to the DC area. And it's a lot more comforting if because a lot of the representatives in your local community you're friends with. So they're a lot easier to talk to and they can make a huge effect on back east. So I'm happy that you brought that up because, yes, our county commissioners, our senators, you name it, our governor, those people can make a huge impact and they're going to represent you in the state of Wyoming. So hopefully they do that. I really hope people, if you didn't go out and vote, now's your opportunity to make up for that and get out there and tell them, say, yeah, I made a mistake. I didn't vote last time. But if you don't do what I'm supporting right now, I'll guarantee I'll vote next time.
And I guarantee you I won't vote for any elected official
Absolutely
that votes in favor of this. Never, ever again.
Nope.
And I won't express how I voted in the last election. I didn't vote for a few of the ones that are there now, but I definitely won't vote for them in the future. I just, it's a betrayal.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone that's willing to get into that field can fight against some of these other candidates and beat them out. Because we all know that some of these, there's no one running against them. And that's where else we need help with. People that are willing to take that part and go against them because sometimes that's the only person on that list to vote for. And it's sad. And it's not only that no one's voting, but we also need some people that I know can do a great job representing the state of Wyoming, can go there, will be elected. So that would be my other encouragement to some folks out there.
Yeah, and you guys did a good job, or the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. You guys put out that questionnaire to potential elected officials from a sportsman perspective and ranked them like, how do you feel about this? And we need to do a lot better job of that in the state. And I don't mean the Wyoming Wildlife Federation, sportsmen as a whole. If we don't want to be in this position every year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, it's caused me a lot of anxiety. I've had some sleepless nights and it sucks that something we hold so dearly can be potentially lost. So I just think we need, as a collective, as organizations like Muley Fanatic Foundation, Wyoming Wildlife Federation, all the other NGOs and everybody who recreates, I think we need to put a lot more emphasis on this leading up to elections, because the second leading revenue generating thing in this state is tourism, but that rolls into hunting and fishing. Why people come to Wyoming, our wildlife, all those things. So this isn't this is not a small thing. So we need to gear up more. That's my thoughts. And we need to get people in office that are going to just, the second something like this comes up, they're pounding their fists and saying, hell no, not happening. Like the guys in Montana.
Boy, that would be nice. Yeah, I guess the last thing that I'll plug then is that we do an annual event every year at the Capitol during legislative session. If you want to learn more and figure out how to get a little more involved with your legislators, how a bill becomes law, get a tour of the Capitol, run the whole gambit of your democratic duty, we do something called Camo at the Capitol, and it's a free event. It's in Cheyenne. It is unfortunately in Cheyenne in February, but if you can get there, it's a full day of training. You get to meet your elected officials. The governor is usually there speaking. The director of Game and Fish is there. You really get a great view into how our state makes decisions, not just for the state of Wyoming, but for the hunting and wildlife specific voice as well. And this year it'll be on February 12th. So it'll be in the first week of session on February 12th. It's a Thursday. And we're just hoping that we can fill that Capitol with well-intentioned and educated camo.
I've already told Jesse we're going to be there.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I already told her we're there. We're going to be part of it, whatever we can do to help.
Yeah.
And hopefully, like the folks that you mentioned, Chris, that they don't know what to do or how to do things when it comes to this stuff. This is a great opportunity to do that. Just ordinary sportsmen attending this event, and we're there learning things just like anybody else. And that's a great opportunity. So you can't say you can't learn what to do. Yeah. So Jess, she gave her final thoughts. Jano, any final thoughts on this?
Just make sure you contact your representatives. Let them know that Wyoming's not for sale.
Chris?
Yeah, same. Wyoming, all the other states. I don't hear Alaska being talked about a ton. It's a little bit removed from the West, so to speak. But there's a huge amount of land up there, so eyeballing. And that Ambler Road, that's a huge deal that'll cut into a lot of different pristine country, potentially. Everybody just needs to reach out, again, respectively, voice your opinion, and let them know how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just echo what Chris said earlier. Congratulations, Jesse. And we're so happy
Yeah.
to see that they picked the right person, fell in the perfect lineup. And I'm so happy it was you that got there. And again, we just can't wait to see the work that you do and what you're going to do over there to represent us and even the Western states. If you need anything on that side of thing or whatever,
She needs money. Got to get to DC.
hey, maybe a little proposal, we can probably help out with that. Yeah.
It was not quite in our budget to drop of a hat, buy a plane ticket and hotel rooms for 2 nights in DC. We are doing a little fundraising around that, but I'm really humbled and honored to hear from you guys, and thank you for that.
Awesome, Jess. We really appreciate you joining us today and talking about the situation. And again, thank you so much for all that you do for Wyoming and on that political side of things, because a lot of us can't handle some of those things, and you're just top notch on that. Really appreciate you joining us today on the podcast. And again, we can help out with whatever you need to for representing on that side.
Thank you guys, and thank you for the opportunity to talk and for getting this information out and just all the work that you do. It is reciprocated, so thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Give them hell.
Yeah, give them
Thanks,
hell.
Jess.
Sounds good.